Hey everybody, welcome to another Polars tutorial. This is the second part of a series I'm doing on string manipulation in polars. Specifically what I'll be covering on top of what I covered in my previous video is just more string manipulation methods. Namely, I'll be talking about getting a substring from a larger string, and I'll be talking about three methods to do that: dot head, dot tail, and dot slice. Dot slice is probably going to be the most common one that you're going to see being used, but dot head and dot tail definitely have their use cases as well. I'll talk about those. We'll talk about splitting a string into definite words. So in other words, if there's a string that has a delimiter in it, like a space or a comma or something like that, and it's useful to be splitting that string into words like a first name and a last name, for example, then there are built-in methods in polars to help you accomplish this, namely .split and splitn. We'll talk about the differences between those. And also I'll talk about zero filling and padding strings. So with zero filling, oftentimes you have, in a lot of data sets, you have an ID variable of some kind, like that goes from, say, 0 to 1000. And you'll want that ID variable to be 4 characters long, regardless of the actual digit. So if you have an ID value of 1, you'll still want that to be 4 characters long, but with 3 zeros padded onto that. And so the padding functions in polars help us accomplish some of that. So we'll talk about some of the padding functions as well. The sample data I'll be using today, I'll be using a full name column, so of just first name and last names. And I'll use this to demonstrate how to split strings into words, namely a first name element and a last name element. I have a phone column, and of just phone numbers, of course, and I'll use this to demonstrate how to substring from a larger string. I'll substring out the first 3, second 3, and then last 4 digits from this number, and then an ID column, and I'll use this column to discuss how to zero fill. Okay, so let's get right into it. First, let's talk about how to substring the phone number field using .head, .tail, and .slice. So what .head will do, we'll use .head to extract the first three digits from that phone number. So the way you use .head is you point to the column, so PL call, and then you do the string namespace, so .string, and then you say head, and what head is going to do is it's going to start at the beginning of the string, and it's going to substring out the number of characters according to what you write in the parenthesis here. So it's going to substring out the first 3 characters from that string. So if we look back at our phone number data, it's going to substring out this 801 for the first record, this 402 for the second record. So for the last 4 characters, we can use .tail for that, and I'm just going to call this column last 4. And so to use the tail method, use .string and then .tail. And then what .tail will do is it'll start at the end of the string and go backwards according to the number you write in the parenthesis. So this will take the last 4 characters from the string. So what .tail will do is it'll start way back here at this 5 and then go take these last 4. And then the one you'll see most frequently in people's code that you have the opportunity to see is the .slice method. And .slice is most common because it can substring anywhere in a string, because you can specify where to start. And so there's 2 arguments in .slice. The first argument is the starting point, and so here we're telling .slice to start at position 4, and then the second argument is just the number of characters to substring out. So what this means, to read this quite literally, it means start at position 4 and then go 3 characters. And so oftentimes it's again helpful to go to our data, and so we're going to start at position 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to start at this 5, and we're going to take 3 characters. And so we'll just take a look at these data and just see how it all looks. What did I do there? Okay. My fingers are missing the keys. Okay, so there we have our substring operation, and those are the three methods you use to substring larger strings and polars. And as I said before, the slice method is probably the one you're going to see most frequently used. But the head and tail option are definitely very useful in that they're very easy to use and you don't have to specify a second argument or anything like that. And so the next thing we'll talk about is how to split strings into words. So in other words, if we go to this full name column, how can we get separate elements or even columns for this first name and this last name, despite the fact that it's packed into this full name field? So the way you do that is with the split method and also split n, but I'll just talk about split first so we can just kind of get a primer on things and then talk about some of the contingencies you might be facing in some of your analysis work. So the way you do this is you start with the column you want to point to, so pl call full name, and then dot string split, and then in the parenthesis you specify the delimiter, and so the delimiter is going to be the thing, and so that's by, and so by is the delimiter. The delimiter is going to be the thing that Polars is going to use to separate the words out into separate elements. And so here I'm specifying a blank space. So Matt, Smith, what separates these two words is this blank space. And so Polars is going to see this blank space, and it's going to create separate elements for each of these words. Now, if what separated these words was, say, like an underscore or a dash, I would write like a dash in here, and that would be the delimiter. But right now it is a blank space, so we will use this to specify the words. And so split n is going to do the same thing, except you explicitly tell Polars how many elements to parse from the string you're trying to create. And if an element isn't there, say like it's only one word and it can't be parsed any further, it's going to fill that resulting data structure, in this case a list or a struct that's going to be created, and it's going to give it a missing value of none. And so this will become more clear as we see the results. And so that's what this first argument is. This is the delimiter, and this is the number of items we're trying to create. And so here's split naive, this column that I created. And so I call this split naive because we don't really know how many items are in the string we're trying to parse. And we're just sort of assuming it's going to be 2 and that we'll get our list without issue. And so here we see we have a list and it's always 2 elements. And we see that split exact, where we specified that we wanted 2 items, is a struct, which is absolutely fine. Structs are easy to work with. And it's 2 items as well. But what happens if we go up here and we change our input data so that this final record here only has 1 item in it? What's going to happen? Something interesting happens. Now we have a list with just 1 item in it at the bottom here. And that's all well and good. It's technically not a problem, but if we have code that expects there to be 2 items in this list, then this could toss back an error. Now there are ways to get around that with your Polars code, and we use .get. But if we absolutely want to be sure that we have 2 items in our resulting data structure that comes out of it, split.exact is probably the better option here. Now which option you choose and which is best for you is going to require some inspection of the data and some analysis. String data can be very messy. And so you will want to do some detective work and just kind of figure out what your data looks like, what you're trying to get out of it, and what the nature of it is. And that can guide which particular extraction method you use. And so finally, I'll talk about the padding methods. And I'll be padding the ID column here. And again, the ID column is just this ID that we're giving people that runs from 1 to 13. And we want to change this so that it's 6 digits and it's padded with some kind of character in the front or back so that it's always going to be 6 characters in length. So the first one I'm going to use is zfill, and what zfill stands for is zero fill. And in zero fill, it takes one argument in the parenthesis, and that's a 6 I'm putting here. And so what this tells it is that it's going to be a maximum length of 6 for this character string we're creating here. That is out of ID num. And if it's shorter than 6 digits, or 6 characters, put zeros in front of it until it actually gets to that 6 characters in length. And we're going to call that zfilled ID. And so the next one I'm going to talk about is pad start. And pad start does the exact same thing as zfill, except zfill, it'll automatically front pad your string with zeros. With pad start, you can specify what you want to pad with. So here I'm padding with just a dash. If you wanted to replicate the behavior of zfill, you could change that to a 0. But I'm just going to leave it as a dash so that we're absolutely clear on the distinction between what pad start and zfill is doing. And then pad end does the same thing as these other two, except it pads at the end of the string instead of the beginning. So it backfills instead of forward fills. And again, we're going to make it a maximum length of 6 digits, or 6 characters, excuse me, I keep saying digits. And we're going to pad it with stars. And so we'll go ahead and print that as well. Okay, so there's our zero filled ID that we created with zfill. We see that each ID now has a maximum length of 6, but is padded with zeros. And pad start does more or less the same thing as zfill, except we got to choose the character that we padded with. We padded with a dash. And same with pad end. We back padded with stars. Okay, guys, so that's a very basic analysis to string manipulation in polars. There's lots more to string manipulation. There's lots out there. This is just kind of what I find myself using most. So if you have any other questions about string manipulation, feel free to write them in the comments, and I'll see about addressing them in future videos. So thanks so much for watching. Bye now.